Revelers, this is Off the Rails, Right versus Left, the podcast that we do because we think the left is evil. I'm Rob B.
And I'm Brad Lee.
And I'm Brian G.
And we are Off the Rails, Right versus Left. Again, we're doing this show because we think everybody needs to know. I don't think everybody needs the rest of the tagline. You guys know how it goes. Again, it's Rob B. I'm back and I'm doing more interviews. Sorry about the promo that went out with the wrong candidate. I was communicating with more than one candidate by the name of Steele, and I mixed up the interview times for Jim and Seth Steele. So we have Seth Steele, who's a candidate for the Texas House, District 18. And if I'm not mistaken, that means he is a libertarian, which, of course, being a libertarian, that makes me absolutely excited to talk to him. So during the conversation, I'm going to try and fix it where I can, since we're broadcasting on 9 different channels. It's going to be fun to go and get it fixed everywhere. But here joining me is Seth Steele. Seth, thanks for joining me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. There's a little bit of lag. Not sure if it's on my end or your end, but I can mostly understand what you're saying.
Okay, great. So, well, I mean, it's fantastic. So you're libertarian, right? Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So every time I talk to a libertarian, I kind of want people, because nobody seems to know what a libertarian is. So
yeah,
what is a libertarian to you?
We're all about, lowering the government standard on civilians, allowing people to possess their firearms without any strings attached, private usage of drugs, not really anti-government, not like complete anarchist, but just to give people the true liberty that they deserve and that their forefathers fought for.
Right. So, and I think actually, the way I kind of word it is libertarians are kind of about restoring the freedoms that governments have taken away and giving you your money back and getting it out of the government hands. Because I see what we have going on in the country right now is we have the Republicans and we have the Democrats, and they're both trying to tell you how to live and how to spend your money, because both sides seem to think that they can live your life better than you can live your life. Would that be fair?
That's definitely a fair assumption. We all have our different talking points. I don't know about giving money back to people, but eliminating taxes and saving people their own money's worth is definitely something that.
Oh no, that's what I meant by giving people their money back.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and
what
then
I
everything
meant.
After like the 12th, everything after like the 12th Amendment, basically, just like stop that, and then we can actually have a real constitution again. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, and hey, look who we have here. That's my compatriot here on the podcast. That's Brian G.
Yo.
The best description for him is he's kind of a Republican, but he's so centrist. I don't know that he's actually a Republican, but in our duopoly, I don't think we really have a proper party for him.
No, I'm just very conservative. Very conservative.
Okay. So now going for the Texas House, what's kind of your priorities going in? Because I think a lot of people just say libertarian, they're like, oh, they're wonky Republicans. So
yeah, I mean, that's also a fair assumption. I have conservative values myself. One thing being less taxation amongst the people. better serving municipal departments, because Liberty County's been getting hit with flooding left and right, and nobody's really been there to mitigate it. They just kind of been talking about it for years. And then helping people reserve their right to property that they bought and paid taxes on, rather than get ejected from it. And one hot topic in regards to that would be Colony Ridge. That's a huge flare up in regards to the district right now. And the other thing being school choice. I'll reflect now. I'm definitely about giving people school choice. Parents should have the right to be able to choose where their children go to school. I'm not really even sure why that's an argument. The parent knows right. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially considering, I mean, prior to what was it, Johnson instituting the Department of Education, like the federal government had nothing to do with it. The state governments weren't really involved in it. It was mostly the local government, and it just it's kind of like anything that the government does, they try and take it over, and then they think they can run it better. And I mean, arguably in Texas, our education system here is failing. We're ranked like 43rd out of 53 states. I think that's right, 43rd. And then if you figured that if you were to put us on terms of nations, we're like the 9th largest economy, and on a global scale, we'd be like 100th for education. So we definitely have education problems here in Texas.
Which is amazing when we think of Texas, that you would have a failing education system.
Yeah. So is part of your design to fix that? Is it specifically school choice, or helping further get rid of the stranglehold that the teachers union have over the educational process?
As far as public schooling, the teachers are going to know what's best. As much as I don't like, pointing that way as a more Republican valued, I think that, we need to keep those school boards in place because they're the experts when it comes to teaching children. I just think that there's probably a lot more going on at these public schools in regards to things like mental health. We've had, I believe, a couple school shootings happen and a lot of threats go on here recently. This wasn't a common thing in Texas before. And then, just kind of keeping a closer eye on some of these bonds that are going out, and I'll mention, the candidate that's running against me right now. She has, I think it's like 2 bonds that she's taken out with public property that she hasn't paid back 1 cent. So there might be slightly some corruption going on out there too. It's just little minuscule things like that it causes people to pay more attention to the politics rather than the children. So if a parent wants to say, hey, I don't want my child going to this school anymore, they're failing my child, they can just move on out. I think that's the first major step that we can take to giving people their rights and freedoms back. And of course, that start with your children.
Right. Well, I think I would make one addendum to what you were saying there, because you said the teachers know best. I didn't say anything about the teachers. I said the teacher union. Because it used to be the unions were just teachers, but now the union is just an organization that exists purely to keep themselves in power, which includes limiting accountability for teachers, because if they lose teachers, they lose money. And that's why they're up in arms about that's the reason why the teacher union is specifically why school choice is an issue, because then you're going to pull it into private workplaces where they don't have to be part of unions to be teaching. And that now takes away people that are paying them. So I draw a difference between the teacher unions and the teachers, because like
are near impossible to get rid of a teacher even if they're underperforming.
Well,
go ahead.
They have the right to association, and unfortunately, public schools is like a social service. I don't adhere red or blue. I'm just telling it like it is. It's a public service until we can figure out how to get children more operable in the private schooling or online portal education. Which starts with school choice.
Mhm.
Give them some competition, some wherewithal. And
Yeah.
no, I don't agree with all these social services, and I classify schools, public schooling as social services. It's a necessary evil for now. That's the setup. It's like I can't just come in there and then, let's say, run for governor and then just eliminate all the taxes at once. But I'm definitely going to chip away at it over time.
But that never happens.
Yeah, exactly.
No government in this country has actually reversed their spending in like 50 years.
Yeah. But lessening it to unconstitutional taxes, like for instance, we have a tax. If you have a vehicle that's so old, you actually have to pay an inspection fee, but you don't have to get your vehicle inspected anymore. And that's current right now. That's taxation without representation. And so we should at least.
Oh no, I think we're losing him.
Is that him? I don't know if that was me or him.
No, it's him. He had a little bit of a wobble there. I hope he can hear us on our end. So I wouldn't say that I would classify that as taxation without representation, but it is what's happened across our tax system, where every time the government takes a tax, they keep taking a tax. They never give anything out. Oh, he bounced back. He's back. He's back.
I don't know what just happened. I
back.
thought y'all booted me out.
Nope, you just dropped. You won't get booted. You won't get booted out. So okay. I do want. So I want to address a few things that you said there. Okay. Teachers have a right to associate. Okay. What unions do is say you don't have a right to teach unless you're part of our organization. That's wrong.
Yeah.
The only thing they do for teachers, realistically, is get them more money so they can get more money. But we're not increasing the volume of service. Now, through the teachers union, we've negotiated bigger and bigger contracts and got worse and worse results. Okay, and the majority of the people working for the unions are not teachers. So it's no longer an association of teachers. It's now a for-profit entity that goes under the guise of being a nonprofit entity. They pay themselves millions of dollars while purporting to be representing the interests of the teachers. I don't have a problem with teachers unionizing. I have a problem with unions don't represent the teachers, they don't represent the students, and they don't represent the state. So they're not representing anybody but their own interest.
So if you're asking me if I agree with those current administrations, absolutely not. If you're asking me if I would have the willpower to abolish them, I don't believe so. Like I said,
I didn't suggest abolishing them, but to a degree, decorporatizing them because there's a very racketeering feel to the idea of you do what we say or we're going to punish you, but the job you're actually working at can't punish you if you're not doing the job.
Oh, it's even worse than that. I mean, they're out there using government funding to pay each other off at the same time.
Exactly, and that's my point of the unions. Now, you did mention the school shootings, so the first thing, and you're going to be in the state house, so I mean, they talked a little bit about getting more school resource officers, blah blah blah. So I put it this way: if you go and work in the Texas House, nobody's getting inside that building without a gun. Why can't we do that in schools? Because arguably, kids are more valuable than politicians. No offense if you become a politician.
No, none.
So why is hardening the schools? I don't care what the school looks like as long as my kids are inside safe and learning.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm just going to rebuttal. School choice is a huge factor there. If you don't feel like your child's safe, by all means, leave the school.
Yeah.
I mean, to be real honest with you, I think the whole thing sounds like cattle herding. At the end of the day, they're putting numbers in the form of money on children and trading them off. And trying to keep track of who goes where, which school will get the most funding. I hate all of it.
I mean, you got to get the funding. So you got to get the
Right.
funding to support the students that are there, because not every community has options for or has other educational options. The majority of students don't actually respond to virtual education. I mean, Brian's got 2 young kids. I do not think for a second they could like exist in a world where they have to do their classes on the tablet. I'm pretty sure they'd be on YouTube and TikTok the whole time.
Well, and why they didn't pass that school choice bill there in Texas? I probably would have been down there by now, buying property and living if you guys had, because I would have been able to convince my wife, hey, this we can decide where we're going to put our money for our kids to go to school. I mean, that was a big bill. I hope that comes up again and actually gets passed.
So we're good on that. And then the other aspect for the school choice. Now, have you been involved in the education system at all?
No, I'm not. I'll be honest with y'all. I'm not really even a politician. I'm filling in for my wife, who was kicked off the ballot for protesting the filing fee. So there wasn't anybody that wanted to come up against the current opposition. So I stepped in, paid the filing fee, and then got like 2 months to campaign.
And you're against Janice Holt. I think we lost him again. Okay. Whenever he unfreezes here, we need to ask him. All right, where in Texas are you? You need some Elon Musk Starlink out there.
Well, actually, I'm in Cleveland, Texas. It's showing, we're using AT&T, and it's showing that we have good connection. I don't know. Maybe somebody doesn't want me to confer with y'all today or something. I'm not really sure.
Could be. And then I just had music start up again randomly.
You've never experienced that before, have you, Rob?
Well, I mean, I've had a couple bad signals, but it was usually because the person had bad signal or the person was moving, and so it was picking up and dropping. So, but no, so what's very interesting about these interviews, I'm getting views on every platform except for YouTube as far as the live streams. And then when I repost them with a little bit different formatting, I get views. So yeah, I know all about like I make the joke, if I ever mention that really big country with a really high population that starts with a C, the whole system completely crashes. It's the weirdest thing. Every single time that I mention that country during a podcast, my podcast crashes. And you know what? I haven't had it happen since I stopped saying the name of that country. And I'm sure you know the country I'm talking
about. So what was I able to get that thought out before I froze up?
I don't think so. So go ahead and rehash it.
So my wife got kicked off the ballot. They gave the Secretary of State the full authority, and basically that's in the works of being a patsy. Now my battery's running low. Gave her the ability to eject people from their ballot without using the governor's name, full permission party.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the current representative, Ernest Bales, was ejected during this election simply because he didn't equal choice, and they needed patsy for the creation of Collin Ridge Estates. And they spent more money on my current opponent than any other candidate running for a House position, equivalating almost $1 million.
And your wife is Shanna Steele, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah, and that's why I didn't see you, because I saw a profile for Shanna, and then of course I talked to Jim Steele too, so that caused all kinds of confusion. Then he popped on. I'm like, okay, I got something wrong here. It's Seth Steele.
Look now.
So Go ahead,
Colony
Brian.
Ridge, I've heard twice now. Colony Ridge, is that illegal immigrant construction project that's been going on outside of Houston for a while, where thousands and thousands of cheap homes are being just thrown up for illegals?
Right. Yeah. So Ernest Bales initially helped approve Colony Ridge, but it was signed off by Governor Abbott. And keep in
Yeah.
mind that the developer paid $100,000, I believe, to sit at a luncheon with Abbott to construe this thing. This is how the governor works. He creates things, he creates turmoil, and then he advocates against them as controlled opposition. And then he throws these other candidates or people in positions under the bus later on. And that's why he spent, like I said, $1 million. That's unheard of for House of Representatives. Anything, that they don't go up that high. Maybe a couple 100,000. But I found that really interesting. And then the funny thing is, she spent all the campaign money running against Bales, and then forgot that she still had a libertarian opponent. She went like a couple months with. Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
it boggles the mind that this whole Colony Ridge could even be going up, because it's not to code at all. You think it'd be closed down just because of code. And then all the illegal stuff that's going on in there, the illegal aliens that are housing there and all this. It's just amazing that this colony is still growing and thriving.
So if you're a development, that's where things change. Is Liberty County is lax on building codes in the foremost.
Mhm.
It's a $50 permit. You get a blue slip, and you can go on to building. When it becomes a subdivision of sorts, they even get more permissions. But like I'll say again, it didn't just take the approval of Ernest Bales to create this thing. Governor Abbott also put his seal on it. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is he was still involved in the process and even took money in the form of a donation from the developer of Colony Ridge. And now all of a sudden, he's a human trafficker and a
Yeah.
Is that part of your district?
Oh yeah. That's what it's centered around.
So what can you do on the state level to actually even have any effect on that at all? Is there anything you can do once you're in office?
Yeah, I can try to put together a bill to eliminate these legal loopholes and require the governor's seal on those same transcripts in order to present and fund a development such as Colony Ridge. That way he can't just scathe his name off of it and say, oh, well, anything that happened, that's Steele's fault. The reason I brought that up was because the same kind of occurrence happened with the Secretary of State. When they kicked Shauna off, they only used the Secretary. Now, if there's enough complaints and lawsuits filed, it's going to come onto the Secretary of State, not Greg Abbott and not the Lieutenant Governor.
Well, one reason I brought it up is just because honestly, that's one thing that sort of makes me hesitate of moving outside the Houston area, looking at places out there because of something like that, this huge colony that's growing. And it makes me concerned with a family looking at moving in the area when something like that is going on.
Yeah, you definitely got to do your due diligence if you're looking at buying a house. Make sure that the house was built right. So, and for you to know, like, I'm in the process of relocating out here by Crockett, Texas. So, but I was living in Livingston, and before that I was in Springs. So probably about like 15 years I've been in that part, and before that I spent 6 years down in Castle Hills down by San Antonio. So I've kind of seen the way things work in different parts of the state. Like, it blows me away. When I was down in San Antonio, they did a freeway project that was done in like 3 months, and then we sat through 5 years of them trying to build one overpass in Houston. So, like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I'm an Alaskan kid who's bought a property in Washington and hates it up here. I want to move down to Texas or something where you got more freedom.
So,
Well,
so the other part, so when you're there, do you plan to propose any legislation to get more clarity as far as finances at the state level, and a little more clarity about where our money is going at the state level? Because I was like pouring through the Texas state budget, and like some stuff like jumped off the paper at me, like, why did we have a $9 billion payment to Lockheed Martin from the state of Texas? Stuff like that looks
right.
kind of weird.
Yeah. So unfortunately, these kind of payments that are done at the highest of racketeering are done by Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott himself. In order to stop that, we're going to have to vote them out, and it doesn't seem like it, but I think people are becoming more conscious and aware, kind of like, how they sent money off to Israel. What the hell are you doing? Where'd that money even come from? It's supposed to all be accounted for. Is that private funds that you're handing out, or are these, donations, or is that tax money? And nobody really seems to know. But yeah, I mean, if there's a way for me to vote on more transparency when it comes to the state spending, I'm all for it.
Okay, yeah, because the Texas legislature has impeachment power, so I think really like the first place to start would be proposing legislation that codifies some of these problems and specifically makes the consequence impeachment to get rid of some of this dirty pool. Because I noticed it a little bit under Rick Perry, and now under Abbott, it seems like it's even more out of control, where there's just weird line items that are obviously payoffs to campaign contributors, and they're coming out of the Texas budget.
And that's been going on for some years now. I mean, they use these PACs to go back and fund Fortune 500 companies, and then turn and relocate.
Oh no,
the
they're not using
their...
PACs. The state of Texas is sending billions of dollars to these companies. Like, it's in the budgets.
Yeah.
In the budget reconciliation.
And then those same companies. Yeah. Well, if you
funnel
follow
the money back through the PACs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's been doing that, and it's like people are just now catching on. We've been aware of it. Shauna ran for lieutenant governor last time, and we were checking out the money funnel, and it's like, oh, well, we've had more Fortune 500 companies moving to Texas than any other state. I wonder why.
Because they're getting huge they get huge tax incentives. They funnel money into the PACs that support the politicians. Then the politicians go and give them money, and they put part of that money back into the PACs. So it just becomes an ever increasing funnel of funds right back into the pockets of the politicians. The super PACs are able to hire the governor's friends, and then the governor's friends, for example, allegedly gives him kickbacks on the side. That's not actual income that he's reporting. So yeah, he looks clean, but it's all dirty. So yeah, that's why I asked if you get in there, if you're going to propose legislation that requires 100% clarity for any PAC and for any payment coming from the government in Texas.
So the truth be known, if you do your digging, you will see these donations and how they reflect. I think the go-to here would be the original amounts sent off to these companies individually by the governor, lieutenant governor, and some of these other DC heads that exist in the representation of Texas. I think that maybe you and I could come in an agreement that should be transparent. But these super PACs and the amounts of money that they spend on these individual campaigns is cleared. It's just a lot of people aren't paying attention to them.
Right.
I believe that's
I just mean that we need to create
on the
create
Secretary
an easier to find trail
of
for the
State
voters to see.
website. You know, they have, but I
Yeah.
agree. You know, I don't impeach. They should be able to hold office after all this money that's been exchanged in you know, tax breaks and other incentives, especially if not one of these companies is really doing the state any good. You know, it's like you still have people on wages that they can't afford to live on, you know, but we have the most Fortune 500 companies out of any state. And he just goes around boasting and bragging about this stuff like you know, it's a godsend, and it's really not. It hasn't changed a thing, except for the fact that these companies, in turn, when they come here, they're able to buy up private property as well. And I'm in huge disagreement with that. I don't think that a large corporation should be able to buy residential property. I think that's another huge
No.
problem that we have all over the United States, let alone Texas.
Absolutely.
Are you guys seeing like they have in other states where China is actually coming in and buying farmland and such? I know that's a huge part of your guys' property.
It's happening in every state.
Yeah. So we do have China down here, and I don't know if it's okay to mention his name. Big BG is also buying land. I'm not a big fan of his. You know,
I'm just waiting
of
for the
course-
podcast to crash because we use the C word.
um,
Oh wait,
but
I'm not
yeah.
doing it from an iPhone now, so we're probably okay. So go ahead.
So if you want to talk about legislation against large corps being able to buy up individual land and condemned land, that's another subject that's not talked about too much. Definitely in the focal point of that. There is a port being built endearing the Trinity River right now. Y'all probably aren't aware of this, but there was some mass flooding that happened down there towards Horseshoe Lake Estates and the thicket. And FEMA is all over the place down there right now. These people have signed waivers to get funding from FEMA to rebuild their RVs, campers, trailers, whatever. And I think that there's a massive land grab that's going to persist before the full construction of this port. And that's another example of what we're talking about. When these big bozos come in, all of a sudden I'm not going to claim anything about HARP on this podcast or anything, but I think it's incidental that we have these massive floods happen. These giant corporations come in and buy everything up, and the government helps them by eminent domaining the land. And of course, I will always vote against eminent domain. I think that's just the epitome of Satan right there.
Yeah, the government. Well, and then they tell you that your property is worth whatever they want to tell you it's worth.
Yeah.
On top of it.
Yeah, you don't even get a good deal to be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So yeah, I didn't even think about the eminent domain aspect. But what I do find funny is like how many of these like natural disasters are like barreling straight for all the conservative areas of the country. Awfully coincidental.
Yeah, and then we mentioned lithium
and
mines,
then where's the FEMA response? The Democratic strongholds.
Right. Yeah, and it's when people put those two together, they start finding out that neither side is your friend. Y'all need to cross over to libertarianism. We stand with the people.
So if my buddy Brad, who does the show with us, was on, then of course he'd like go off on a rant about libertarians and interfering with the elections. And what I can't get him to understand is we were never intended to be a two-party country.
Right.
We didn't resolve down to a two-party country until the 1900s, and everything has arguably gotten worse in our country since we went to a two-party system. And then when Ross Perot almost knocked over the apple cart, the two parties like got so like restrictive where they would like cut their own party's throat if it meant making sure that an independent didn't get in, or a libertarian or a green party or a socialist party. Like, not that I'm advocating for those guys, But like, if those guys can get the votes, they have a right to be in office, and they shouldn't have the Democrat and Republican parties cutting their throat to keep them off the ballot.
Right. And like I said, with the Secretary of State, that's exactly what's going on now. There's a federal law that exists to protect people who are indigent campaigners, and the state does not uphold that. They're just kicking people off the ballot left and right, when before you could protest that filing fee if you're an indigent campaign. They know most of the runner-ups are going to be Democrat and Libertarian that are going to come up short in their campaign financing, and they're more than likely to, or I guess the Secretary of State now themselves is more likely to kick you off. It's candidate and voter suppression, and it is still going on way past 1908.
So, and if you're, and just so people know, if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, how much is the filing fee?
So for me, $750. If you're running up, I believe for lieutenant governor, it's somewhere around 5,000.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing for all the national offices. So yeah, it's insane. And as I've been talking, so I'm planning on launching a campaign. The first thing I'm going to do is go and I'm going to try and as far as fiscal conservatism and the ideas of freedom, the Republican Party is far more in line with my libertarian ideals. And I'm going to first primary Pete Sessions and try and get him off the ballot before the general election. Because I don't think it's hard to make a case. He's been in office for 27 years and can't brag about anything he's done for Texas. So, I mean, he has voted to increase our taxes a whole bunch. He's voted to increase spending a whole bunch. So even if we weren't directly being taxed, we're eventually going to have to pay for it. And, but he has gotten some real nice plaques put on some post office buildings that aren't supposed to be part of the federal government anymore. So, so I'm going to have fun with that. If I lose, I'm going to come back and get him as a libertarian. But yeah, we're already planning that I'm going to have to do a bunch of fundraising in order to get through there, because if I can't take him down in the primary, I'm going to have some huge filing fees and a lot of legwork to do in order to take him on. So I admire what you're giving, especially for a seat that you're not going to make anything. You're probably going to lose money by going and serving in the state house, right?
I don't see myself making a lot of money. Maybe my gas money will get covered during special sessions.
Yeah, but the wage for a state house is what, like $7,000 a year or something like that?
No, that'd be the lieutenant governor. Is around like 6,500. That's another thing I want to mention. I'm going to get back to the answer, but how in the hell are all these politicians we have in office multi-million-dollar executive expert stock traders, and they don't make nothing but $7,000 a year in their position? That doesn't make any sense to me. And we want to talk about government corruption, and yet it's staring at you right in your face. There's no way a lieutenant governor that owns a hot dog stand off near Houston or something, right? And this dude's worth like $15 million. And he makes $6,400 a year as a lieutenant governor. That's insane to me.
Well, I know. So Texas state lawmakers, the base salary is now $7,200. Plus, they get 50 cents a mile for travel outlays and a per diem of $221 per day during sessions.
Yeah.
So basically, and that about covers the hotel in Austin if you paid attention to what hotel rates are in Austin these days. Well, unless you're like getting stuck by dirty needles at a Super 8.
Right. But yeah, that's really, saying is you'll get your gas money covered. But I don't really see how you can make $5 million a year doing that. But they manage it.
Yeah. So that again, and I think a big part of it was like these governments aren't supposed to exist to keep making laws. And if either the Democrat or the Republican Party had it right, they've both been in power in Texas. If either one of them could get the job done right, it would already be done, and they wouldn't even need to be in session. I'm just saying.
Right. And another thing I want to hit on is term limits. I definitely think, you've been in so long in office, you did well. That's great. but allow for the next candidate to come in and try to make it better. As we're always shooting for better rather than these lilacs that don't hardly do anything. Like they get elected, they just sit there like dust in a chair for the rest of their term until someone comes along and wins against them. So I just want to throw that in there. That I'm definitely for term limits.
Right. So and what do we have? So right now we've got Dan Patrick, who's the lieutenant governor, right? Got Ken Paxton, the attorney general. Although I think I don't know all the facts, but that one, the way they rolled him kind of looked a little dirty.
Well, okay, so
I'm not saying he's clean, but the way they got him looked dirty.
To me, it looked like they held him up so that he could become their patsy. That's what I keep talking about. You know, it's like the governor will get some dirt on you and then force you at his will, and you will get no mercy unless you agree with all of his policies. And Ken Paxton is a great example of that. You might a lot of people might not realize who Ernest Bales is. That's just a district house representative, but we all know who Ken Paxton is and the controversy that surrounded him. And it's like now he's a total yes man for anything that Abbott wants him to do. And prior to that, it wasn't like that, right? It's just we have an extremely corrupt government here in this state, and needs to stop.
Oh, I mean, I think they're corrupt government at the state level, and that's why I'm like interested in talking to some of the state level candidates, because what we need to do at the state level is also what I'm advocating. Like I advocate for the federal government, and I think it would be great at the state level too. If you're a member of the legislature that votes to pass a spending bill that spends more money than you took in tax revenue the previous year, you're no longer eligible for re-election.
That'd be something.
Okay. If you're caught voting on something that you have a financial interest in, you're no longer eligible for re-election.
I thought they had laws like that. They have anti-bribery laws. Nobody follows them.
Yeah, they do. But if you can make an articulatable accusation and actually put it before a judge and allow it, so any member of any of the people that these people represent can make the accusation, and a judge has to see the evidence and make the declaration. I think we'd either get a lot of people out of office or a lot of people would clean their noses real quick.
We don't have a good system of checks and balance here in Texas. I mean, the same guy that would come after you, like Ken Paxton, he's part of the Republican Party. He accepts those same kind of bribes. You have the lieutenant governor who's supposed to drive, and uphold the law in that regard. Same thing, and then
and he oversees the Senate, so he's over there doing the bully pulpit on the Senate.
Right. So yeah, we definitely need to have some checks and balance over here, and that's another good reason not to vote red or blue, because they're all in it with each other. Having some outsiders come into the frame would have them adjusting themselves pretty quickly, I believe.
Yep. And then I would throw in there, if you're in the Texas state legislature, you have the power of the purse. The minute any of these Republican executive branch employees trying to inhibit the process of the legislature, defund everything that they want.
That'd keep them honest, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to force them back to getting honest. So anyways, so we've been, oh no, it's actually, this wasn't as long. I thought it was going a lot longer. And then I look over, I'm like, oh, it's only 7:40. So beyond cleaning up the corruption, like helping with the school choice, are there any other big priorities you have when you get to the state house? I mean, you've got a lot more limited range than if you were going to the U.S. Congress. So like, it's pretty much just trying to clean up what's going on here in Texas. So
because of, a lot of hardships have been placed on the people, I want to see if there could be like a forbearance or injunction in regards to property tax. I'm going to try to eliminate property tax the best I can. But I don't think that extra assortment of fees being given in District 18, as much as we've been impacted, should really be on the people, at least at this time for the next couple years. And
So like
if people
maybe some legislation, if there's an emergency declaration in a county, then they're exempted from
yeah,
tax, and maybe the state government, instead of spending $9 billion to Lockheed Martin, can instead put that aside to help supplement the local governments that have to stop collecting property taxes for a while after a
right,
disaster.
definitely, yeah. Rather than this be like a social type service, at least injunctifying property tax would definitely help relieve people a little bit. I'm not big on giving people handouts, but pretty much the way you said it, that would hit the nail on the head. I think that'd be good for the.
Well, and it's like the same thing. Well, in Texas, we have a little bit of a problem here. All this stuff of like people relying on FEMA. I'm
Right.
kind of like you as a as a person with a brain, know that you were building your property in a hurricane zone, and for you to expect the government, federal or state, to come in and fix it for you, that's kind of on you. So, and again, that's a handout thing. Now, for the government to come in and try and squeeze people out, especially using like zoning and building
Mud.
requirements and stuff to try and squeeze people out, that's disgusting and shouldn't be allowed. But at the same time, yeah, I don't want to turn to the government as supplementing people's bad decision making. If you built your house next to a lake in a place where there's hurricanes, your house is going to flood and you're an idiot.
I mean, yeah, that was putting it bluntly, but the truth hurts.
Yeah, I see the same thing. Now, I mean, you got a different situation in Western North Carolina where it never floods. They never get hit by a hurricane that high, and they did. Those people didn't make that bad decision. That a storm like that hits maybe once every 500 years. They're an exception, but I don't feel bad for people in California that build their houses on a dirt cliff and are shocked when there's a landslide when it rains. And I'm not feeling bad for people in Galveston Island, which has been destroyed 3 times by hurricanes, if their house gets destroyed by a hurricane. And I don't feel bad for people in Miami who build $1 million mansion and then their $1 million mansion gets destroyed by a hurricane. You knew you were building in a hurricane zone.
To their defense, I mean, not that I could do a lot of defense for it, but there were areas that are isolated outside of the Trinity River and lake areas, such as Colony Ridge, that did flood, and those people did mention. And as far as the Trinity River Authority noted that these broke all-time highs for the last 35 years. Those waters rose higher than they have ever rose before.
Yeah, but about every 15 years we get a city destroyed by hurricanes. So if a hurricane destroys your house in Texas, you knew it was going to happen.
Right.
Or if you're in East Texas and you get destroyed by a tornado, you knew it was going to happen eventually.
Right. So rather than give them handouts, I agree that at least some tax break incentives. Since we're supposedly going to eliminate property tax, these Republicans have been saying that for 25 years. Until the meantime, at least help some people out that are having a hard time. They are our Texans, and we should be representative of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a problem with property taxes because you're getting taxed again and again on something you already bought in a place where
you don't own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that to me is a great way to ensure reduction of wealth. You should be taxed on your purchase price, and if it goes up in value, you shouldn't be taxed higher because it goes up in value. You should have the same property tax in perpetuity.
So that's another problem that we have in this state is, when there is a flood, the county can come back and reassess how much everything is worth based on how they fixed, quote, the problem. And then all of a sudden, your property amount that it's worth will go up. Therefore, you're taxed at a greater rate. And a perfect example of that is one of the counties in my district, Montgomery County. They're all the time seeing property tax rates just like Houston is now, since they passed those laws. So that's something that I would definitely aim to debilitate, is them being able to reassert themselves with the value of your home. Yeah, the county appraiser.
I don't think any house should be assessed except when it's sold.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going around saying, "Oh, well, we moved some dirt in this public park that got flooded, so therefore all the houses around this public park are worth more money now." So they bring in the county tax appraiser, and automatically your taxes went up for that next year, usually unbeknownst to the people that live there.
Yeah, and I love the fact that the people who are assessing how much you need to pay are the people receiving the benefits of the assessment.
Yeah, and then how they do that is they use these mud districts, these mud tax. Those are actually private companies that are wannabe developers that come in, and they're able to allocate themselves over every land mass that they come into contact with. That's how Colony Ridge started, was with the mud district.
And for people that don't know, a mud district is a municipal utility district, but rarely are they actually utility companies.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the part that people miss, is it usually the same guy or someone related to them is the developer. That's the person who has the ultimate scheme to get control and over an area to make a subdivision or wherever they're trying to do.
Yeah. So and again, while I see the benefit and the value of developers, I think they'd play a little bit more honest if we just took the building rights back to, you can do whatever you want on your own personal property. If you're a corporation, you don't get a rent property. You can build and sell, and that's it. And then if we get, I mean, real quick, we're going to get corporations out of private ownership. We're going to open up the market, which is going to drive down prices, which should also drive down assessments. But again, like I said, I think the only assessment that should be done on a property is when it's sold. So like, okay, I build my house, my initial assessment's $100,000. That assessment isn't going up. I mean, I don't think you should be taxed more than once on property anyways, but that assessment is not going up unless I sell. And then it's assessed based on the value that the house was sold on, because that's obviously the value. It's what it was sold for.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's kind of where we're trying to take this to.
Yeah, because you see so many places where they assess well, I mean, cars are another thing. Like the idea of regulating people's rights to freedom. Okay, you want to tax it, great. You tax it when they buy the car. You shouldn't have to make people pay for permission every year to be able to drive their vehicle. Yeah. And then the idea that you're going to dictate how old of a car somebody can have. And let's face it, that's what the laws in Texas are. These safety enforcements, they end up raising the requirements until an older car can't meet them. And then you just have to get a new car.
Right. Exactly. Another thing I want to note, the inspection went away, but the emissions did not. A state trooper could still pull you over and you fail emissions and you get your car towed. So, and what you're saying is that they try to debilitate, cars is definitely still true, even though they try to paint this picture that they eliminated the inspection. They still have a fee for that as well. And again, that's taxation without any representation. They're just charging for something.
Well, there is representation.
Yeah, it's a small fee.
It is the people. No, but it is the people in the state houses that are passing these laws, which is why we need people like you that want to say, get your hands out of my pocket, get into the state houses and reversing the trend and maybe undoing some of it.
And I totally will, but I will get back to the representation. When they're declaring that you owe them a fee for a service, it has to be for an actual service. What they're having you do is they're paying for something that's non-existent. So to me, in my own definitions of what representation is, not to be argumentative or anything, but when you go get your driver's license, you pay a fee, right? And that's for them to go and print all your info, do a background, whatever.
Yeah, it's to cover the cost.
Right. They're just ghost billing you for something and telling you to like it, and like, oh, but we also, you don't have to go get your car inspected anymore, so that means you can drive your old beater just the way it is. That's not true either. If that means you're either
Right.
getting a ticket or you're gonna, and it's just like in Abbott passed constitutional carry. What y'all don't realize, or you might, but what most people don't realize is the police still have the authority to come and disarm you and arrest you for carrying a firearm. A lot of people didn't look into constitutional carry. I can carry wherever I want. Try it, especially near the Capitol, and see what happens to you. There's videos on YouTube about it, and that's something.
Well, I mean,
that I
because we are live streaming, I can't show you my idea of constitutional carry, but I will say that there's still zones that they've declared that you can't legally carry, but I do like that they did away with the requirement for concealed carry anywhere you're allowed to legally carry, but there are still places you're not allowed to carry, so you have to be aware of where you're carrying.
Well, there's that, but there's also a probable cause for detainment while carrying. And I think a lot of people, like I said, they're not aware of that. So I'll just give you an example. If the police want to disarm you and place you under arrest to do a background check on you for carrying a firearm in public, means open carry, they can, regardless of where you're at. So I understand 30-06, 30-07. I'm a security consultant by trade. That's something that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they actually have this reasonable articulation to be able to detain you, which now in the state of Texas, it's only arrest, but it's really a detainment. So they're going to stop you. They're going to take your firearm. They're going to run it, and then they're going to run you just because you were open carrying in public.
Yeah,
And
and my encounters on that have been to the opposite. I've encountered many police while open carrying and never had an issue. I've been pulled over while I had my truck gun in the glove box, never had an issue. But I understand it depends on who you run into. But I would say, but again, that's something that the Texas state legislature, we're talking about how they're enforcing laws. The Texas state legislature is who's required to fix the laws. And that even goes with the taxation without representation. The representation was the Texas legislature made it so the state can go and levy these fines, fees, and everything else every year. The Texas state legislature needs to take that power away.
So, all right. So when the police, and mainly the DA, that's who you're talking about, is going to ultimately accept the idea of you being detained, arrested, or transported to a jail, would you rather they have the ability to take you to jail until they can further identify you just because you're practicing your constitutional right to carry? Keep in mind, we're talking about the word constitutional. There shouldn't be any.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, but so the legislature has the legislature needs to pass the law that if you detain somebody for exercising a constitutional right and you had no particular suspicion they were committing a crime, you as a police officer will be removed from the force and thrown in jail for violating their constitutional rights. But that's where the legislature has to write the law, and then you get to fight the battle about how it's enforced. But if the law is the way it is, you can't argue about how they're enforcing it because they're enforcing the laws that the representatives of the people passed. But of course, they didn't tell their constituents, by the way, I'm making it okay for the police to arrest you for doing nothing wrong. But it's what they did.
So if the day ever comes, the Armageddon, World War III, martial law, just know that there are stipulations that occurred with the passing of constitutional carry. Your buddy Harry Blue Cop, he might be a great guy now, but let's see what happens if they flip the script. Trump gets elected, declares martial law because of incoming. I'm not being a Nostradamus here. I'm just giving you an example.
I think it's more likely the other side because the others. Yeah, I just think that even the proposal that it would be Trump, considering he was already president and didn't do it, whereas you got Harris, who is actively trying to censor free speech, get illegal aliens voting, legally prosecuting their opposition politically, their political opposition, like 10 different members of the political opposing party have been thrown in jail. They burned down half the country for a full entire year in 2020. And the people that participated in January 6th, half of them haven't even been tried, and they've been held in jail without a trial. So yeah,
Okay.
I accept I accept your scenario, but the martial law is more likely to be enacted by the people who want to tell you what to eat, what to drive, and what weapons you can have.
Well, your Republicans tell you what kind of weapons you should have as well. You know, if we look at President Trump and all his glory, that's where vaccines originated from. He boasted and still does that he got more record number people vaxxed and boosted than any other president, which he was talking about Biden. This was early on when COVID was
they didn't have boosters while Trump was in office. They just barely started rolling them out as he left office. Yeah. So he did push Operation Warp Speed. Okay. And then a bunch of bureaucrats in the NIH approved the vaccine that make money if that vaccine actually goes into service. So they rubber stamped it being approved so they could get their royalties off of the patents. So yeah, I mean, I know exactly what happened there. But no, I'm just saying, like, Trump has been in office and he didn't do any of those things. But there is a side trying to silence free speech, trying to take away weapons. I think Trump's bump stock ban was bad policy.
Yeah, Biden or Harris don't have the balls to declare martial law. So I went with one that I bicker rather than go back and forth, that I think that Trump would be more apt to do something like this than any of those Democrats would. You know, just humor me for a second here. If they declare martial law, the police gonna pick you up off side of the road because you're carrying a gun, and they're gonna take that shit. And that's why they made the law the way that they did, so that they would gain control against right. So, you know, I agree with policing. You know, when it comes to violent crime, murder, rape, sex trafficking, I'm all for it. And I want to help as much as I can. Unfortunately, the majority of law enforcement that's occurring out here on the side of the street is, you go to Houston, right? You got a joint in your pocket. HPD finds out. They're just going to take the joint, throw it on the side, if they even do that, throw it on the sidewalk and be like, hey, you can't have that. Rather than write you a bullshit ticket, I don't even want to deal with this. Or B, right outside Harris County, you go over to Conroe, Texas, you're going to jail for the night for that same joint. We're having interregulatory problems based on what a federal agency said is legal or illegal, right? And we're throwing people in jail in one county versus another, and enforcing laws that really don't mean anything, you know? And meanwhile, we got street gangs in District 18, like the Banditos. None of these guys are talking about this shit. I was down there in the thicket one night. I'm going to tell y'all a story if y'all want to hear it.
Yep.
Nobody.
Go for it.
So I was down there in Big Thicket. I was down there in Big Thicket Estates one night. I was at my camp property, and this little redhead girl, about 19 years old, comes running down and beating on my door. She's got blood coming out of her skull. The side of her face is caved in. She tells me she just jumped out of a moving car. And I'm like, oh God, what do I do? So this place doesn't even have coordinates, or it has coordinates, doesn't have an address yet, right? This is down there in the preserve. I'm talking about like wild cats and fucking jungle stuff going on. Oh, excuse me for my language. So, you know, she's demanding help and stuff. So I call the police and I call EMS, and I try to keep her stabilized without passing out. And, like, again, like, she's just bleeding all over the place and stuff. And I wish I could help her more, but I don't know what they're going to have to do to her in the hospital. So, you know, they get down there and come to find out that she had been held on by chains. Somebody had chained up her legs. She had shackle marks on her jeans. And she's a little skinny girl, you know. It doesn't look like she has a whole lot of fight left in her. Like she had been starved or something. And, it turns out through at least when I had that conversation with the Liberty County Sheriff, that she had been a victim of sex trafficking, human smuggling, and this stuff is going on, out here in the woods where nobody's really paying attention, in the district, and we're over here focused on bull stuff laws like marijuana and whether or not you paid your car taxes and stuff. And we have these biker gangs and the Aryan Brotherhood. They're still active out there, abducting people. If y'all remember, there was a news piece about this little girl named Audrey Cunningham, Livingston, Texas, and it was the public was the ones who actually found this girl's body. A lot of people claim to have known her whereabouts, like where she was at the time. Law enforcement wasn't active. I don't remember if that was Polk County. I think it was Polk County Sheriff doing that search. That's another example of this rampant human smuggling. That one was on the news, but you have other stuff going on out there and people going missing that you're not going to hear about on the news. And
so I'm throwing this one up here because you should know about this one. Now it's not violent crime, but the city of Patton Village, right? It's not too far from you there.
Yeah, familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, you said you're in Cleveland, right? So you drive through it every time you go to Houston.
Uh-huh.
So here's what I think's funny right here. Here's their property tax budget. Here's their spending. Where do they get the rest of the money for that spending? Sitting out there on 59, just doing BS tickets on people. And even if they dismiss it, they still get to collect the dismissal fees. So they make $1.1 million. They have absolutely nothing to do with the freeway whatsoever, other than people get off the freeway if they want to go to their town. I can't imagine why you'd want to, but yeah, that's what they do. They sit there and here we'll put the guy running for office in the big spot here. Anyway, so that's another thing. Like they're sitting there pulling people over for like a crime that has no victim, citing them, and 2/3 of their budget comes from giving tickets to people that weren't doing anything to people in their city.
Well, so let's not forget asset forfeiture. Forfeiture. So asset forfeiture.
Oh, no. I got you. But my point is their budget's supposed to work off their property tax incomes, but they have a $1.6 million budget and a $500,000 property tax budget, which incentivizes them to target people for crimes with no victims, whether it be through forfeitures or fines.
Exactly. Yeah. So one way I'd like to combat and stuff like that is, a lot of the people they pick to victimize are, I hate to say it this way, but they're people of color, ethnicity, and people that like to drive lavish vehicles, like Camaros, Chargers, SRTs, etc.
I call a little BS on this because, like, in this jurisdiction, I've been pulled over there 3 times. 1 time driving a 20-year-old pickup truck and 2 times driving a 10-year-old SUV.
I was going somewhere with this. Okay,
yeah. So I get you. But no, there's anybody they can get. Yeah.
Well, there was a finisher to that. Okay, I'm not really gonna go into how many times I've been pulled up, not by Patton Village, but by Splendora and all those. They're all kind of together. But the ones that they actually take stuff from in this little advent I call asset forfeiture, it tends to mostly black guys who come through their hood. Actually, in every single if you remember Montgomery County, they went and bragged about a Camaro that they tricked out and turned it into one of their police cruisers.
And it was something they stole from a citizen.
Right. And they can legally just take it from you and say, hey, we won't prosecute you anymore as long as you sign over this crap to us. In that instance, no one signed anything. They just kept the damn car and put lights and sirens on it. It was crazy to me. I don't know how that was legal. But
yeah,
in
well,
one of
because
the ways,
it's the way that, and that's another one. If you get into the state, the way the asset forfeiture laws are written, the person is required to prove they're innocent to get their property back, which is completely unconstitutional.
right. So I don't know how I relinquish myself of looking like a drug dealer in a neighborhood. I don't, that's not even a crime to look like one. But so that would be one way that I intend to, I definitely want to change that around. Profiling for asset forfeiture. I think that should be completely illegal. As far as
Asset
them,
forfeiture without, I would argue that asset forfeiture without a criminal conviction should be illegal.
well, yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be written that way, as far as I understand. They have
Nope,
another.
they do it so they can take away the assets of the logic behind it was like if they're charging somebody with a racketeering or drug trafficking, they might be too slick to get convicted. But if they seize their assets, then they can hurt their operation so they can't function. That's the logic behind it. But what it really ends up being is the government can seize assets from people that aren't convicted of a crime. So again, you punish people that didn't break the law in an attempt to get it. Our justice system works that way a lot, where you punish people that aren't doing anything wrong in order to get at the people that are, instead of just targeting the people that are.
Predictions.
Yeah, he's kind of coming and going.
Yeah, little delay there.
What time is? Oh, it's about 8:00. Everybody that left Houston at 7's going through Cleveland right now. So I think that's what happened. Anyway, we are running up over a little bit over an hour. So if he gets back on here, we are gonna call it a day and say goodbye. But I mean, this guy seems like he's really like thinking out things and how the government is impacting.
No, seems like a smart guy who's really thought out some stuff. You're right.
Yeah. The one thing that I would really like to stress to him, if he gets into the House, his job is to promote either amendments to the existing laws or promote new legislation to fix the problem. Once you're in the House, like legislation, that's how you do it. And if they won't give you what you want, you can just shut off the funding until they do. Yeah. So that's going to be the key, and it's going to be a hard battle going in as a libertarian. So I guess we lost him, but I do want to say, thank you, Seth, for joining us. I wish you the best of luck on your election, guys. Remember, early voting's already going on here, so make sure that you get out there, get your votes in, and if you're over there in the Texas, what district was that? District 18?
18, yeah.
Yeah, the Texas House District 18. Go ahead and get your vote in. I think that guy sounds like he's like really working it. It sounds like he's up against like a corrupt politician over there. So make sure you hit it. And we're gonna call it a night, but we do have more interviews coming up tomorrow, all the way through the election. And then I like the way these interviews are going. So I think going forward, we're gonna keep doing the interview format. And thank you guys for watching.